Let's all go to the movie. Oh, wait, I need to wear my movie.
Drop it to the flow, drop it to the flow. Bring it back up slow, bring it back up slow. Make that booty roll, make that booty roll. Throw your back out,
Let's all go
girl,
to
throw
the
your
movie.
back out, girl.
Hopefully, very soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Movie Review on the Friday Podcast. So I saw this movie on YouTube. It was a little censored, but it was still pretty crazy. Once Upon a Time in America. It's a 1984 epic crime film co-written and directed by Italian filmmaker Sergio Leone and starring Robert De Niro and James Woods. Incredible acting. The film is an Italian-American venture produced by the Ladd Company, Embassy International Pictures, PSO Enterprises, and Rafran Cinematografica, and distributed by Warner Bros. It was based on Harry Gray's novel, The Hoods. It chronicles the lives of best friends David Noodles Aronson and Maximilian Max Berkovich as they lead a group of Jewish ghetto youths who rise to prominence as Jewish gangsters in New York City's world of organized crime. The film explores themes of childhood friendships, love, lust, greed, betrayal, loss, and broken relationships, together with the rise of mobsters in American society. It's interesting. I didn't know it was an Italian film about Jewish kids. It was the final film directed by Leone before his death 5 years later, and the first feature film he had directed in 13 years. It is also the third installment of Leone's Once Upon a Time trilogy. I didn't know that either, which includes Once Upon a Time in the West, which came out in 1968, and Duck, You Sucker, which came out in 1971. The cinematography was by Tonini Deli Colli and the film score by Ennio Morricone. Leone originally envisaged 2 3-hour films, then a single 269-minute, which is 4 hours and 29 minutes, version, which is crazy. That's like bigger than Endgame. But he was convinced by distributors to shorten it to 3 hours and 49 minutes. Damn, even that's pretty long. The American distributors, the Ladd Company, further shortened it to 2 hours and 19 minutes and rearranged the scenes into chronological order without Leone's involvement. Whoa. Controversy. The U.S. edit was a critical and commercial flop in the United States, and critics who had seen both versions harshly condemned the changes made. The original European cut has remained a critical favorite and frequently appears in lists of the greatest films of all time, especially in the gangster genre. So I guess I saw the American version. Obviously, right? So the plot. In the 1930s, 3 thugs search for a man named Noodles. Noodles is drugging himself in an opium den with a newspaper next to him featuring the death of bootleggers Patrick Goldberg, Philip Stein, and Maximilian Berkovich. He recalls the police removing their corpses, one burnt beyond recognition. Noodles evades capture and leaves the city. In 1918, David Noodles Aronson leads a gang of him and his 3 friends, Patsy Goldberg, Kakai Stein, and Dominic, performing jobs for local gangster Bugsy. They meet Max as he foils one of their robberies, but has the booty stolen from him by corrupt police officer Whitey. Max joins their gang and they later blackmail Whitey and get the same police protection as Bugsy. The gang becomes a successful the gang becomes successful liquor smugglers. They deposit their earnings in a locker, giving the key to a friend of theirs, Mo. Noodles is in love with Mo's sister. Deborah, who dreams of becoming a dancer. Due to his socialization as a gangster, Deborah sees no future for their love. Bugsy, now a rival, ambushes the gang and fatally shoots Dominic. Noodles kills Bugsy and is sentenced to prison. Upon his release a decade later, Noodles rejoins the gang. During the diamond heist, they use jewelry employee Carol as their informant. She goads Noodles into hitting her, after which he rapes her. That's, there's a couple rapes in this movie, which is pretty tough. But I think that's what makes it so realistic. She goads Noodles into hitting her, after which he rapes her. She later became Max's girlfriend. Noodles realizes that the heist was commissioned by a syndicate figure to eliminate competition. This leads to tension between Max and Noodles, who seeks independence. The gang provides protection for Teamsters Union boss O'Donnell, during the course of which they exchange newborns at a clinic, punishing the head of the police whose wife has just given birth to a boy at that clinic. The results in the police withdrawing their actions against striking workers. Noodles takes Deborah on a lavish date. When she reveals her plans to pursue a career in Hollywood, he snaps and rapes her. As she departs the next day, he attempts to catch a glimpse of her sitting on the train, but she avoids eye contact. It's crazy because he didn't know how to, it was like he was emotionally stunted. And the fact that he was able to do that and get away with it once, he was able to do it again. Sorry, I need to blow my nose, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, pretty crazy. And they don't show it, but they just show like the struggle, at least on the YouTube version. The repeal of prohibition forces the gang to look for alternate activities. Max suggests a New York Federal Reserve bank heist, which Noodles and Carol deem too risky. Carol convinces Noodles to inform the police about a lesser offense, hoping brief incarceration will cool off Max's ambition. After Noodles calls the police, Max knocks him out. Upon regaining consciousness, Noodles learns that Max, Patsy, and Kaka have been killed by the police during the heist, as established at the beginning of the film. A guilt-ridden Noodles hides in the opium den. During his subsequent escape, he realizes the locker money has disappeared. Now in the 60s, Noodles returns to Manhattan for the first time since the 30s, after receiving a letter indicating that his identity has been uncovered, seeking to find out who was responsible. He learns that the bodies of the three friends have been relocated to Riverdale. He visits their mausoleum in Riverdale and finds a key to a railway locker. The locker reveals a suitcase full of money, stated to be the advance on his next job. Noodles learns of the corruption scandals around Senator Christopher Bailey and visits Carol in a retirement home run by the Bailey Foundation. She tells him that Max manipulated them into tipping him off to the police and that Max opened fire first, wishing to die young. Noodles spots Deborah in a memorial photograph, who has become a major actress, and starts to suspect the connection between Deborah and Bailey. He tracks down Deborah and visits her, telling her about his invitation to a party at Bailey's mansion and challenging her to tell him about the mysterious job as well as the identity of Bailey. Deborah admits to being Bailey's lover and begs Noodles to leave the city before facing hurtful revelations. Ignoring her advice, Noodles leaves her after seeing Bailey's son, who looks like the young Max. Noodles meets Bailey, who turns out to be Max. Having faked his death, Max stole the gang's money and reinvented himself as a self-made businessman. He also made Deborah his mistress, thus robbing Noodles of everything he had. Faced with ruin due to the corruption scandal, Max reveals that he is behind the mysterious job, which is for Noodles to kill him. Noodles refuses. As Noodles leaves the estate, the garbage truck passes and a man, presumably Max, walks towards Noodles until the truck passes between them. Noodles sees the truck's auger conveyor grinding garbage, but the man is nowhere to be seen. Interesting. So it's been a while since I saw it, but yeah, it was trippy. So interpretations. As the film begins and ends in 1933, with Noodles hiding in an opium den from syndicate hitmen, and the last shot of the film is of Noodles in a smiling, opium-soaked high, the film can be interpreted as having been a drug-induced dream, with Noodles remembering his past and envisioning the future. In an interview by Noel Simsolo, published in '87, Leon lent support to this interpretation, saying that the scene set in the 60s could be seen as an opium dream of Noodles. In the DVD commentary for the film historian and critic Richard Schickel states that opium users often report vivid dreams, and that these versions have a tendency to explore the user's past and future. Interesting. The ending, in which Max is seen by Noodles outside Bailey's mansion only to disappear behind a truck as it passes, was reportedly left ambiguous on purpose. James Woods, who played Max, stated that he does not know if Max jumped in the truck or just disappeared. Critic Carlo Affatigato described the twist as a paradox, postulating that the whole film is about how Noodles spends the second half of his life seeking out the truth of what happened, only to discover it, not accept it, and not investigate what happens to Max in the end. Noodles only wants to believe the reality he has created for himself, not an objective one. Affatigato also believes that this could point to it all being in the imagination of Noodles. Many people, including Schnicknell, assume that the 1968 Frisbee scene, which has an immediate cut and gives no further resolution, was part of a longer sequence. Ebert stated that the purpose of the flying disc scene was to establish the 1960s time frame and nothing more. Interesting. So yeah, this is back when De Niro was still a cool guy in Hollywood, in my opinion. Let's see. So the production. During the mid-'60s, Sergio Leone had read the novel The Hoods by Harry Gray, a pseudonym for the former gangster-turned-informant whose real name was Harry Goldberg. In '68, after shooting Once Upon a Time in the West, Leone made many efforts to talk to Gray. Having enjoyed Leone's Dollars trilogy, Gray finally responded and agreed to meet with Leone at a Manhattan bar. Following that initial meeting, Leone met with Gray several times throughout the remainder of the 60s and 70s, having discussions with him to understand America through Gray's point of view. Intent on making another trilogy about America consisting of Once Upon a Time in the West, Duck, You Sucker, and Once Upon a Time in America, Leone turned down an offer from Paramount Pictures to direct The Godfather in order to pursue his pet project. Interesting. What would The Godfather have been like if Sergio Leone directed it? At some point, Leone considered other colleagues, including Milos Forman and John Milius, for the role of director, with him just serving as producer. For some time, the project was linked to French producers André Genevois and Gerard Lebovici, and later to Gaumont, with Gerard Depardieu and John Gabin supposed to be main actors. Acquiring the rights to the novel proved to be complicated, as they had been bought by Dan Curtis, who intended to shoot the film, and refused various offers by Leone and his backers to sell the rights. Curtis eventually transferred the rights to Alberto Grimaldi in exchange for Grimaldi's production of his $2 million film Burnt Offerings. Initially, only a draft for the film's opening scene was made, penned by Ernesto Gastaldi, and developed by Robert Dylan, which Dylan eventually used in John Frankenheimer's film 99 and 44 out of 100% Dead, much to Leone's dismay. After Grimaldi bought the rights, he felt that he needed an American scriptwriter to faithfully capture the spirit of the novel. He eventually made a deal with Norman Mailer, whose draft greatly disappointed both Grimaldi and Leone, who later described Mailer's draft as a Mickey Mouse version of the novel that lacked in structure and made no sense at all. A few elements of Norman Mailer's first two drafts would eventually appear in the film. After Mailer's fiasco, Leone opted for an all-Italian team of scriptwriters. Leonardo Benvenuti and Piero Leonardi would focus on the 1920s section, Enrico Medioli on the 30s, and Franco Kim Arcali on the time shifts, with Leone supervising and Franco Ferrini polishing the script. As of 1975-76, Leone's casting ideas still included Depardieu and Gabin, as well as Richard Dreyfuss as Max, James Cagney, Robert Charlie Bois, and appearances by Henry Fonda, James Stewart, George Raft, and Glenn Ford. In 76, Ennio Morricone had already composed all the main themes for the film. In the meanwhile, relations between Grimaldi and Leone soured, with Grimaldi unconvinced of the film's commercial viability and eventually exiting the project, being replaced in 1980 by Arnon Milchan. At this stage, Leone's casting ideas included Tom Berenger, Dustin Hoffman, Paul Newman, and Liza Minnelli. A 317-page shooting script was completed in late 1981. The final script, translated in English by Stuart M. Kaminsky, was approved by Leone in May of 1982. So I guess it was written in Italian. Interesting. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. I just woke up. I didn't finish the podcast last night. I'm finishing in the morning. All right, so in 81, at Milchan's suggestion, Leone met Robert De Niro and eventually offered him a role of his choice between Noodles and Max. De Niro's commitment turned out to be crucial for Milchan securing the financial backing for the film. So probably if it wasn't for De Niro, the movie might not have get made, is what they're saying. For the role of Max, eventually played by James Wood, about 200 actors were auditioned. Elizabeth McGovern was chosen for the role of Deborah against De Niro's request for having a New York native with a Brooklyn accent, due to Leone's appreciation of her performance in Ragtime. Oh yeah, Joe Pesci was in it. Joe Pesci was chosen by Arnon Milchan because of his role in Raging Bull and was offered a supporting role of his choice. Tuesday Weld was cast as Carol, a role that Leone had previously envisioned for Claudia Cardinale at De Niro's recommendation. For the children's roles, Leone entrusted the task to Sis Corman and asked him to not have child stars and instead to have actors who had lived in New York's Jewish neighborhood and had no previous acting experience. In the end, Corman provided mostly actors without film credits, but with experiences on stage and on television. Smart. So the filming started in 82 and eventually ended in April of the next year. The locations where the shooting took place were in and around US, Canada, Italy, and France, with the focal point in New York City. Interior scenes were mostly filmed at the Cinecittà Studios in Rome. The beach scene, where Max unveils his plan to rob the Federal Reserve, was shot at the Don Caesar in St. Beach, Florida. The New York's Railway Grand Central Station scene in the 30s flashbacks were filmed in the Gare du Nord in Paris. The interiors of the lavish restaurants where Noodles takes Deborah on their first date were shot in the Hotel Excelsior in Venice, Italy. Shooting in New York proved to be difficult as the IATSE labor union raised a strong controversy over Leone's use of a foreign crew and launched such a massive public protest campaign that President Ronald Reagan called for a Department of Labor investigations into the matter. De Niro shot his scenes in chronological continuity. His makeup as an old man required 4 to 6 hours of preparation. After a few weeks, Milo Jacoponi, Manilo Rochetti, and Gino Zamprioli replaced Christopher Tucker, whose makeup was considered excessive and unrealistic by Leone. So they had to make Robert De Niro older with makeup. And now, in The Irishman, they made him younger. I'm sure they used some makeup, but it was mainly CGI. All right, so editing. By the end of the filming, Leone had 10 hours worth of footage. With his that could have been like a Netflix series today. With his editor, Nino Barajli, Leone trimmed this to almost 6 hours, and he originally wanted to release the film in 2 parts. The producers refused, partly because of the commercial and critical failure of Bernardo Bertolucci's two-part 1900, and Leone was forced to further shorten it. The film was originally 269 minutes, which was 4 hours and 29 minutes, but then when the film premiered out of competition at the 1984 Cannes Film Festival, Leone had cut it to 229 minutes, which is 3 hours and 49 minutes, almost 4 hours, baby, to appease the distributors, which was the version shown in European cinemas. So the Europeans got the best version. That's the one I need to watch. So let's see the music. The musical score was composed by Leone's longtime collaborator, Ennio Morricone. Deborah's theme was written for a Franco Zeffirelli film, but was rejected. The score is also notable for Morricone's incorporation of the music of George Zamfir, who plays a pan flute. Zamfir's flute music was used to similar effect in Peter Well's Picnic at Hanging Rock, which came out in 1975. Morricone also collaborated with vocalist Eda Del Orso on the score. Besides the original music, the film used source music, including God Bless America, performed by Kate Smith in 1943, plays over the opening credits from a radio in Eve's bedroom and briefly at the film's ending. Yesterday, which was written by Lennon McCartney in 1965, a Muzak version of this piece plays when Noodles first returns to New York in 1968, examining himself as a train station mirror. An instrumental version of the song also plays briefly during the dialogue scene between Noodles and Bailey towards the end of the film. Summertime, written by George Gershwin in 1935, an instrumental version of the aria from the opera Porgy and Bess, is playing softly in the background as Noodles, just before leaving, explains to Secretary Bailey why he could never kill his friend. Amapola, was written by Joseph LeCow, but the American lyrics were by Albert Gamsey from 1923. Originally an opera piece, several instrumental versions of the song were played during the film. A jazzy version, which was played on the gramophone, danced to by Young Deborah in 1918, a similar version played by Fat Joe's Jazz Band in the Speakeasy in 1930, and a string version during Noodles' date with Deborah. Both versions are available on the soundtrack. Part of the third theme from the overture to La Gazza Iadra from Gioacchino Rossini from 1817, used during the baby switching scene in the hospital. Night and Day, written by... See, these are all the things that when you put a movie together, you got to find songs and music and actors, and it's like so much to put together. And I would love to make a movie one day, but it probably takes years off of you for sure. Night and Day, written and sung by Cole Porter, which came out in 1932, played by a jazz band during the beach scene before the beachgoers received word of Prohibition's repeal, and during the party at the house of Secretary Bailey in 1968. St. James Infirmary Blues is used during the Prohibition funeral at the gang's speakeasy. A soundtrack album was released in 1984 by Mercury Records. That must have been a big-ass deal whenever Prohibition was over and people were throwing funerals for Prohibition, like just getting shit-faced. Was probably amazing. Alright, so the release premiered in 1984 on May 20th, received a 15-minute standing ovation after the screening. However, in the United States, a heavily edited version of the film received a wide release in 894 theaters on June 1st, 1984, and grossed $2.4 million during its opening weekend. It ended its box office run with a gross of just over $5.3 million on a $30 million budget and became a box office bomb. Numerous women at the film's premiere reacted furiously, mostly due to the two rape sequences. One among them later confronted Robert De Niro in a press conference and made harsh comments to the film's depiction, describing it as blatant, gratuitous violence. In general, the rape scenes were controversial. Richard Godin defended Leone's representation of rape, saying that it articulates the dysfunction between bodies and images and bodies themselves. Of the scene in which De Niro character rapes her character, Elizabeth McGovern said, "It didn't glamorize violent sex. It is extremely uncomfortable to watch, and it is meant to be." She went on to state, "And if you say this violence is wrong, you'd have to enlarge that to say all violence in movies is wrong. And then you'd have to say you can only make movies about good people who obey the law and do the right thing, which A, excludes a lot of what life is, and B, makes for some very boring movies." In his book, Leon scholar Christopher Frayling argues that the movie's central gang are all emotionally stunted. This is what I was saying earlier. Like small boys obsessed with their equipment who have no idea how to relate to flesh and blood women. So there's a couple versions. And the bomb, the one that we got, it was in limited release and for film critics in North America, which it was slightly trimmed to secure an R rating. Cuts were made to 2 rape scenes and some of the more graphic violence at the beginning. Noodles' meeting with Bailey in '68 was also excised. The film gained a mediocre reception at several sneak premieres in North America because of this early audience reaction. The fear of its length, its graphic violence, and the inability of theaters to have multiple showings in one day, the Ladd Company cut entire scenes and removed approximately 90 minutes of the film without the supervision of Sergio Leone. I would have been pissed if I was him. And they fucked it up. This American-wide release from 1984, 139 minutes, was drastically different from the European release, as the non-chronological story was rearranged into chronological order. Other major cuts involve many of the childhood sequences, making the adult 1933 sections more prominent. Noodles' 1968 meeting with Deborah was excised, and the scene with Bailey ends with him shooting himself, with the sound of a gunshot off screen, rather than the garbage truck conclusion of the 229-minute version. Sergio Leone's daughter, Rafaela Leone, said that Leone had dismissed the U.S. version as not his own movie. In the Soviet Union, the film was shown theatrically in the late 80s with other Hollywood blockbusters such as the 2 King Kong films. The story was rearranged in chronological order and the film was split in 2, with 2 parts shown as separate movies, one containing the childhood scenes and the other comprising the adulthood scenes. Despite the rearranging, no major scene deletions were made. It's an interesting way to do it. At least they didn't cut out parts. Restored original. In March of 2011, it was announced that Leone's original 269-minute version was to be recreated by a film lab in Italy under the supervision of Leone's children, who had acquired the Italian distribution rights, and the film's original sound editor, Fausto Ancilli, for a premiere in 2012 at either the Cannes Film Festival or Venice Film Festival. The restored film premiered at the 2012 Cannes Film Festival, but because of unforeseen rights issues for the deleted scenes, the restoration had a runtime of only 251 minutes. However, Martin Scorsese, whose Film Foundation helped with the restoration, stated that he was helping Leone's children gain the rights to the final 24 minutes of deleted scenes to create a complete restoration of Leone's envisaged 269-minute version. On August 3rd, 2012, it was reported that after the premiere at the Cannes, the restored film was pulled from circulation pending further restoration work. I can tell you why, but I'm not going to tell you why. This is an interesting movie and why they probably won't want to restore it. People in charge. Home media. In North America, a 2-tape VHS was released by Warner Home Video with a runtime of 226 minutes in February of 85 and 91. The U.S. theatrical cut was also released at the same time in February of 85. A 2-disc special edition was released on June 10th of 03, featuring the 229-minute version of the film. This special edition was re-released on January 11, 2011 on both DVD and Blu-ray. On September 30th of 2014, Warner Bros. released a 2-disc Blu-ray and DVD set of the 251, sorry, I'm dyslexic this morning, and I'm wearing the wrong glasses, restoration shown at the 2012 Cannes Film Festival, dubbed the Extended Director's Cut. This version was previously released in Italy on September 4th in 2012. All right, so the initial response was mixed because of different versions worldwide. While internationally the film was well received in its original form, American critics were much more dissatisfied with the 139-minute version released in North America. This condensed version was a critical and financial disaster, and many American critics who knew of Leone's original cut attacked the short version. Some critics compared shortening the film to shortening Richard Wagner's operas, saying that works of art that are meant to be long should be given the respect, that they deserve. Pardon me, Leone, no disrespect. In 1984, Roger Ebert gave the uncut version 4 stars out of 4 and wrote that it was an epic poem of violence and greed, but described the American theatrical version as a travesty. Furthermore, he gave the American theatrical version 1 star out of 4, calling it an incomprehensible mess without texture, timing, mood, or sense. Ebert's television film critic partner Gene Siskel considered the uncut version to be the best film of the 84 and the shortened linear studio version the worst of 84. Vincent Canby of New York Times criticized the nonlinear narrative that is structured throughout the film. It was only after Leone's death and the subsequent restoration of the original version that critics began to give it the kind of praise it displayed at its original Cannes showing. The uncut original film is considered to be far superior to the edited version released in the US in 84. Ebert, in his review of Brian De Palma's The Untouchables, called the original uncut version of Once Upon a Time in America the best film depicting the Prohibition era. James Woods, who considers it to be Leone's finest film, mentioned in the DVD documentary that one critic dubbed the film the worst of 84, only to see the original cut years later and call it the best film of the 80s. Some were critical towards the movie's graphic violence and cruelty, with Donald Clark of the Irish Times condemning it as a fistful of misogyny and offensively sexist. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, Once Upon a Time in America has an approval rating of 86% based on 56 reviews, with an average score of 8.6 out of 10. The website's critic consensus reads, Sergio Leone's epic crime drama is visually stunning, stylistically bold, and emotionally haunting, and filled with great performances from the likes of Robert De Niro and James Woods. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 75 out of 100 based on reviews from 20 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The film has been ranked as one of the best films of the gangster genre. In Empire magazine, critic Adam Smith compared the film favorably to The Godfather, saying Leone's film is arguably the better of the two, if the less popular, eschewing, as it does, the soapy melodramatics of Coppola's family saga in favor of less audience-friendly, but more intriguing ambiguity and symbolism. I see what he's saying there, because some people think, because Goodfellas, okay, so Godfather is like what the Mafia wanted us to see. Goodfellas was more of what it actually was, as is this one right here. When Sight and Sound asked several UK critics in 2002 what their favorite film of the last 25 years were, Once Upon a Time in America placed at number 10. In 2015, the film was ranked at number 9 on Time Out's list of the 50 best gangster films of all time, while in 2021, The Guardian cited it as the 4th greatest mobster film ever made. In 2023, the AV Club ranked it 7th in its list of the greatest gangster movies of all time. So it got accolades, it's got some awards, British Academy Awards, Golden Globe, Japan Academy Film Prize, Los Angeles Film Critics. Yo, I don't know. I feel dumb now because I don't know which version I watched. It was probably the US version, but even that version was pretty dope. So I bet the other one is incredibly dope. And that's just because back then people were used to real good films. Now we get shit like Snakes on a Plane. No offense, Samuel Jackson, but we got different kinds of films now. So, even a fucked up version of Once Upon a Time in America is better than a fully thought out Pacific Rim type movie. You know what I mean? All right, we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's all go to the movie. Hopefully they don't sue me. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Badass Women in History. Today we're going to talk about